Ukraine says the battle for the Donbas region, regarded as the second phase of the war, has begun after Russia launched a major offensive in the east of the country. According to President Zelensky, a large proportion of the Russian army is now focusing on the east, and the governor of the Luhansk region has now confirmed that Russian troops have taken control of the city of Kreminna. Now, Moscow's forces already occupy large parts of the Donbas. Last month, Moscow claimed it controlled over 90% of Luhansk and half of Donetsk, and its forces are expected to try and encircle the Romanian Ukrainian troops in the region. We understand that Ukraine has around 40,000 soldiers in the Donbas, many of whom have spent years fighting against Russian-backed separatist forces in the region. Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale reports now from eastern Ukraine.
This is now the sight and sound of the Donbas. Severodonetsk, another city and another target for Russia's unrelenting bombardment.
We can assess now that the Russian troops have begun the battle for Donbas, for which they have been preparing for a long time. A very large part of the Russian army is now concentrated on this offensive. No matter how many of the Russian troops are driven there, we will be fighting. We will defend ourselves.
We tried to speak to families taking shelter, but the thump of artillery was steadily coming closer. Well, we just came here to go to a shelter, but there's shelling a bit close to us, and so we've had to move out. A lot of crump of artillery going on at the moment. Nothing appears to be sacred when Russia wages war. This, one of the holiest sites in the Donbas, but that didn't save Svyatogorsk's historic monastery from being scarred by a Russian airstrike. The few who've stayed behind have to queue for food. They're not just hungry though, they're scared.
I cry every day. What kind of God would allow this to happen? I cry every day. What kind of God should we ask to stop all this?
There is now a strong military presence in this town. Just a few miles down the road, Russian forces are advancing from the north. A Ukrainian soldier shared this drone footage of how they were trying to slow down the Russian columns, blowing up a bridge. But they know more will be coming.
We know that Russian forces are bringing reinforcements into this region, but we're doing everything possible. We are ready to repel the Russian occupiers and prevent the capture of our cities. We will stand to the last and defend our homeland.
We headed south, the roads eerily empty.
4, 5.
We soon found out why. Plumes of smoke. Once again, we were within range of Russian artillery.
Turn.
The constant bombardment's also taking its toll on the city of Avdiivka. Here, they're praying for divine intervention. Nowhere here is safe within range of Russian artillery. And as we've seen, Russia is pushing forward from the north, from the east and from the south. And there's a real danger that Ukraine's forces here could be surrounded. For now, they're holding out. So too are the remaining citizens of Avdiivka, hiding in bunkers. But for how long? Jonathan Beale, BBC News, Eastern Ukraine.
We are getting lots of different reports coming to us from the east. With the very latest is our correspondent Dan Johnson. He is in the western city of Lviv.
We're hearing that this major new offensive is underway, that Russian forces are pushing forward from the areas that they've controlled in the east, breaking through their front lines, making some advances in a number of areas, right through the Donetsk, Luhansk and Kharkiv regions. It's about a 300-mile front line around the eastern flank of Ukraine. These are the parts of the country that have been essentially under Russian control, at least in part, for the last 8 years, strongholds of the Russian forces. forces and where we've seen them refocus their efforts since the Russian military was forced to withdraw from around Kyiv a couple of weeks ago. We're also hearing that the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol, one of the last sites of Ukrainian resistance in that city, is being stormed this morning by Ukrainian special forces, by Russian special forces, I should say. We don't have confirmation of that from the Ukrainians yet. There's been a fiercely intense battle there for days now, with repeated attempts to overrun the Ukrainians there to complete the Russian takeover of that city. But we know that there were a huge number of airstrikes across Ukraine last night. Around 1,200 targets the Russian Defence Ministry claims were hit, but focusing on the east in anticipation of this new wave of ground warfare, renewed artillery shelling as well. So civilians in that part of the country are particularly at risk. The Ukrainian governor of Luhansk has been telling his people that they need to evacuate, that they need to get to safety. And we are likely to see more refugees fleeing the east now. But the question for those people will be, where do they go? Where is safe? Because even here in the west, in Lviv, we saw how dangerous things can be yesterday with Russian airstrikes hitting this city and taking civilian lives. So it does look like the Ukrainian forces are digging in the east. President Zelensky said that those forces are prepared to defend every inch of the country, but it looks like the fight is coming to them now. He says they are equipped and ready to defend the Ukrainian front lines, but with a renewed Russian assault, the pressure really is on now. We saw the military build-up in the east with more Russian soldiers and more Russian heavy artillery, tanks and armoured vehicles coming into those eastern regions, and they are now surging forward, trying to take more Ukrainian territory, heading further west.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has been giving an interview in the past few hours or so. He has said this is a significant turning point in Russia's campaign. With more on what the Kremlin is saying from Moscow, here's Jenny Hill.
Well, Moscow acknowledges that this new phase has begun. We heard just now from the foreign minister here saying that the new phase of the so-called special military operation, remember, of course, that Moscow does not acknowledge that this is a war or an invasion. Sergei Lavrov said that this will be a very important phase. As you probably know, Russia's stated aim currently is to try to take the entire Donbas region. And this morning, officials have issued an ultimatum to the fighters still defending the Azovstal steelworks plant in Mariupol, telling them that if they are prepared to lay down their weapons at around midday, they will be able to leave the steelworks within a couple of hours, and they will be given safe passage out of the area, or they will be safe. That is the ultimatum from Moscow. We've had quite a lot of fairly bullish updates all morning here from the Ministry of Defence, talking about having struck well over 1,200 military targets in Ukraine overnight, and that really remains the mood here. As you know, Vladimir Putin wants Russians to believe that his special military operation is going well, so we very rarely hear bad news here. That said, a few reports are surfacing on social media and so on following the sinking of the Moskva warship, that great flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. Its sinking was a huge and humiliating loss for Vladimir Putin. Defence officials have continued to insist that all the crew were safely removed, but some reports are surfacing on social media channels. We haven't been able to confirm them, but there are a number of them from relatives who say their sons and husbands have either been killed or were lost when the warship went down.